Our speaker today is Adam Lewinberg. He is the president of Postal Advocate, the only mail audit and recovery firm in the U.S. and Canada. We manage a portfolio of 128,000 pieces of mailing equipment for the largest U.S. companies. Adam speaks and teaches nationally on mailing savings and industry trends. He is also a former industry co-chair of the Boston Postal Customer Council and Mailing Systems Management Association. He is CMDSS and MDC certified. He is a featured writer for Mailing Systems Technology magazine, and he worked for one of the largest mailing vendors for over 17 years as the director of national sales for Presort, tabletop inserters, addressing hardware, software, and green offerings. And he was one of the top 5 account managers nationally, working with some of the nation's largest accounts. Over to you, Adam.
Thank you, Michaela. So today we're going to talk about how to save money on enterprise shipping and mailing. So what we're going to cover is the future of mail and parcel. What are the dynamics that are happening? How do you get enterprise visibility to your spends across your enterprise? What equipment saving strategies do you have? What postage saving strategies are there for you to take advantage of? What is online postage? What are multi-carrier enterprise mailing and shipping tools? The cost of free carrier-provided systems. Although the systems are free, you don't pay anything out of pocket for them. There are specific costs for using them we want to make sure you're aware of. Some shipping saving strategies. How do you reduce cost in shipping? Rate shopping, address validations, proving out addresses, certified mail strategies to reduce costs, single sign-on opportunities inside of this space, central administration opportunities. So how do you manage these types of platforms? And then the analysis that can be done, to show you what these savings are for the future. So a lot of words here, but I want to talk about what are the future dynamics of the mail and shipping industry. And these are the things that we're all working against. Or working with, because they're the new reality. So remote workers are the new reality. This requires a different support model. Most companies are not sending people back to the office 100% of the time. People are still going to be working, remotely because people like it. And there's a different support that requires to make sure those users have the right tools to be able to do their jobs. Postage rates are increasing at the highest levels. We're going to talk in more detail about that. And the post office has announced that they're going to have 2 rate increases per year as the norm. Shipping costs with UPS, FedEx, DHL are increasing at the highest rates. And when carriers are coming to negotiate your contracts, they have significantly more leverage. And we're hearing customers having incredible increases in their costs because the carriers are at their capacity constraints and they frankly just don't have to reduce your rates. Most organizations that we speak to have limited to no visibility across their enterprise on mail spends. They'll know it in pockets in certain areas, but holistically across their organizations, they have nothing that gives them that type of detail that they need. And on top of that, many people that were in the mailing industry, frankly, retired or moved on to other things. There is less expertise inside most organizations around mail. There's less mail in office locations, but people still need convenience. So more volume has been pushed to central hubs and outsourcers due to the complexities of postage discounts and equipment and automation levels. But there's still the need for support at the office level and the home office user that is just not in place today. And we're going to talk more about that. More volume is pushed to FedEx and UPS due to lack of other options, especially when no mail technology exists at a facility or remote worker. Many people have no ability to print a postage stamp or to generate a postage stamp without sitting in line at the post office. And that leads to bad behaviors, which we'll talk more about. 70% of all postage meters in the United States need to be replaced by 2024 due to USPS mandates on postal security. This will cause most businesses to evaluate what is the value proposition of those devices and look for different support models for getting postage to their users. And this is one of those categories. Most clients hate managing this category due to all the complexities that we discussed and that you'll see in detail in this presentation. So those are the dynamics of mail. Let's talk about what you can do to drive savings and to work within these dynamics. So the first is, last August 29th, the post office had its largest increase in 10 years. And you can look at the increases prior to the one we just had, and that you could see that on August 29th, rates increased from 4 to 17%. the largest mail categories that make up, if you're, make up the majority of clients' mail spends are these outsourced mail classes. So whether you're using a pre-sort service to pick up your mail, or whether you, send mail to a third party, or whether you have a production facility in-house to do it, you saw 8 to 17% increases on these production classes. In July 10th of this year, the post office proposed another increase that would stand as the second largest increase that people have had in 10 years. And you could see these rates that are going up. This is proposed, but everybody expects this to go in its entirety. That means that clients are going to see in a 12-month span 10 to 30% postage increases. Most people haven't budgeted for those increases. Most people have no way of even having visibility to it. And we're going to talk about what are strategies you can do to minimize this, or in some cases to save money. So mail across an organization, if you look at an entire pie of an organization's mail spends, everything that someone spends money on falls into one of these 5 categories. It's equipment, mail equipment and postage that's done basically in-house. There's home and small office mail, so small offices that maybe don't have any mail technology, or people that work out of their homes. There's mail that goes through USPS permit accounts, so they have a separate relationship with the post office for a postal account. Mail that's outsourced to third parties, and it's processed through those third parties, or expedited document and parcel shipment, which is your UPS, FedEx, or postal shipments that are done. And this makes up an entirety of a company's and organization's mail spends. Our last webinar, we focused a lot on outsourced mail services and USPS permits. In this one, we're going to talk mostly about mail equipment and postage, home and small office mail, and expedited parcel shipment. And we're going to talk about this from the perspective of what you can do yourselves. We're going to talk about how we do it in our organization for our clients and what we view as best practices. And these are tips that you can, and then through that, we're going to give you tips that you can do the stuff on your own, or if you need third-party expertise, we're happy to help or give you ideas. The most important step for any organization, before we start working with any client, the one thing that we do is we say we need visibility to the spends, because you cannot manage any of these categories unless you have visibility to what the spends are. And it is the #1 way to generate savings and to drive any of the initiatives that we're going to talk about. So we will do this type of analysis for any client at no cost or obligation to show them what their mail spends are inside their organization, so they can make a decision if there are further services that are needed by us. But the same thing that we're going to talk about, you can do yourself, and we're going to give you the steps that are needed in order to do that. So the first is request reports from your mailing and shipping vendors, including USPS, UPS, and FedEx, as well as your mailing equipment providers, which are your Pitney Bowes, your Quadients, your FPs, your Stamps.coms. Look at accounts payable records. So typically, a lot of clients don't get any reports or don't have a formal relationship with some of those vendors, and so they don't have any way to request a report. So then we say, go to accounts payable and export the transactions that were paid to those vendors over a last 12-month time frame, and then request copies of specific invoices so you can get the detail of where the spend is occurring. Then create access on the vendors' online web portals. All of the vendors that are in the mail industry that we mentioned have web portals. You can plug in your account number and serial number of your equipment, and you can get visibility to the contract details, the postage spends, the transactions that are being done. And that's true of the Postal Service and UPS and FedEx as well. Maintain, what we're looking for is the details on things like invoices, contract terms, spends, postage balances. Have some method of creating an inventory system of the equipment that would list out the equipment, the transaction details, your contracts, the postage spends, and changes in notes. We built a system that specifically houses this, so we can manage an entire organization's enterprise postage and mail and shipping spend on one dashboard to show them what's available and what are the initiatives. And then all notes and activities can be stored in it. The notes and activities are one of the most important things, so you can see what changes are happening and then measure those changes over time. But you need some way to be able to maintain visibility inside your organization. That's the #1 way to control costs. On the equipment savings process, so gain visibility to your equipment and spends, validate questionable charges. We found over $15 million in overcharges from the mailing vendors. The vendors are not perfect billers by any stretch of the imagination. You want to make sure that you're validating your bills, that they're right. negotiate enterprise pricing and terms with fixed price packages. So if you have one location, this isn't such a big issue. If you're a part of an enterprise, which is where we primarily work, you want to have a master service agreement with one or two core vendors, and you want to make sure you have fixed pricing packages in place so that you don't spend, we find that most clients will spend 2 times more at one location than another for the same piece of equipment because they don't have these types of contracts put in place. And then push for rentals where possible, especially at the low end, because this space is changing so dynamically and volumes are going down at very fast clips. But the last thing you want to do for low, medium end equipment is be stuck in long-term 4-year, 5-year agreements that you can't get out of. So we push to our clients to get into low-end rentals so they can eliminate that issue of being able to switch. Then once these contracts are in place, the most important step is to have a process to work with your end users. The last thing you want to do is give control to the mailing vendors and just say, you take this contract and go to our end users and tell them what they need. With that, you will find that they basically upsell at every opportunity because they're paid on upselling. That is their job. Their job is to provide as much equipment value as they can possibly do. We found that by building a process to manage this renewal cycle, it drives costs down. And our process, we average 56% savings in this category. You can do similar things, but we send out locations with an email that will have a picture of their current equipment, contract terms, and options from their catalog. And some of those options could be returning equipment, online postage, or like smaller rental items for low volume locations. We help them make decisions of what it is that they need going forward, request the agreements from the vendors, notify the locations of changes that are coming up with what next steps they have to implement, and then follow up with each location on the changes that occurred, validating new equipment's been set up and old equipment has been returned. And then we document all the notes to all those activities in a platform. So if you have 1 or 2 locations, you certainly don't need to go through all these steps. But if you have 50, 100, if there are lots of locations across your platform, having a documented process around the equipment renewal process can drive down costs. And at the same time, follow that every transaction is completed, eliminate fees and overcharges. People are paying 22% interest in postage that they don't even know that they're paying. Maintain postage balances and claim loss funds. We found over $7 million in lost postage for our clients because people haven't claimed postage sitting in dormant accounts when they return meters. And then have a continual review to make sure this happens. Postage savings. So these are basically 99% of the ways to reduce postage costs for the average organization are on this one sheet. So it might seem overwhelming to you, the idea of saving money in postage, but these are the strategies and this can make it easy for you. So 1, use a postage meter or online postage to save 5 cents a piece. If you don't have a postage meter and you go to the post office to buy stamps, it's 58 cents for a stamp. If you have a postage meter or an online postage solution, it's 53 cents. So you save 5 cents a piece, and that can add up. If you have high volume mail spends, you want to convert your letters and flats from single piece rates to automation rates. So whether you use a pre-sort service to pick up your mail and get you those automation rates, or whether you have software in-house to get these automation rates yourself. The benefit of this is it saves up to 60% in the postage costs by switching to these automation rates through these services. Up to 3.5 ounces goes for the 1 ounce price. So let's say you're sending a 3-ounce newsletter or a 3-ounce statement to a client, it's 93 cents. But if a pre-sort service picks it up, you get the first 3 ounces, 3.5 ounces at the 1 ounce rate. So that's 46 to 49.4 if you use a pre-sort service for those pieces. Almost over a 50% savings on that piece. For flats, if you can fold flats into 6x9 envelopes or tri-folded in number 10s, there's a huge savings because you go from a flat rate to a letter rate. So it might reduce the price from $1.40 down to 46.1 again. And then the automation provides faster delivery and automated address validation. So there's a lot of benefits if you have higher volumes. If you're doing parcels, so priority mail, first class parcel, express mail, you want to convert from just running it through your postage meter or going to the post office and dropping it off, because those are retail rates, and you want to convert it to commercial rates where you're generating a 4x6 shipping label like you would do for UPS or FedEx. If you can do that, you save 16% for priority mail and 15% for priority mail express and 28% for first class parcels. So all of those require an online postage solution, which we'll talk more about in detail. But on your parcels, you can save 15 to 28% by just converting to a 4x6 shipping label that frankly gives you traceability through the entire process and provides more value in the process for it. Use electronic return receipt versus the green card because it saves $1.25 per piece, and you have a way to manage the entire process of everything that's been received and returned. And then most important, and we'll go into a lot of detail on this, is compare the pricing across carriers for the best rates for each package. In some cases, UPS and FedEx are going to be less expensive than the Postal Service and have faster delivery, and in some cases, the flip side will occur. So this is the majority of ways an organization can save money on postage outside of like highly technical items that are primarily done through your outsourced providers. Now let's talk about the evolution of mailing and shipping. So, and we'll be real quick about this. So the postage stamp came out in 1840, the postage meter in 1920, a parcel manifest, or parcel register, which is like a postage meter that could do UPS, came out. It wasn't clear on the date on that. I think it was in the 50s. In 1985, a parcel manifest came out that was like a way for you to produce your UPS and FedEx on this scale that sat there, and you could produce a report that you handed to the driver. 1990, that manifest became computer-based, so you could type it into a computer that made things easier. In 1999, PC postage came out, so you could download a program to print postage. And then in 2007, that PC postage program became online or enterprise-based, so you could have multiple sites connected together. And then in 2011 to 2017, all those systems became web-based. And so they didn't require any installation of software, and they became more flexible and more connected. My point of this slide is that between 2011 and today, so over the last 11 years, this evolution of what the online accessibility has created, my point is, I think one of the greatest changes in the last 100 years, and has surpassed all these changes together in what is available to the end user. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's talk about home and small office mail. So someone who works out of their home or in a small office without technology has a few options. Their main option is to implement some online postage tools. And online postage is the fastest growth segment of the mailing industry because it's inexpensive compared to postage meters. It's typically sold as a subscription on a per location basis that costs about $10 to $30 per month. It's cloud-based, can be accessed from any device. Within 2 weeks, it can be deployed. You get your login credentials, a scale, and some starter supplies. And with postage meters, you only have visibility typically to how much postage you put onto the meter. So I loaded the meter with $500, and that's the main visibility you may have across your organization, unless you have an elaborate accounting system at a specific location. With online postage, you have visibility to every single piece of mail or parcel that was generated through the tool with the dates and times and cost centers attached to it. So there's a lot more visibility to it. Some systems have multiple carriers you can use, UPS and FedEx, and there's significant postage savings moving to these online postage platforms, as you can see below. So, and many of these are better than postage meters. So everybody gets the 5-cent postage savings you get on letters, so whether you use a postage meter or online postage. But when you do certified with electronic return receipt, it's an extra subscription on postage meters, and only some of the models have it, or online postage, a lot of the systems have that capability. If you do first class parcel, priority mail, or express mail, you can see online postage meters don't have those discounted rates inside them, where basically online postage does, and the savings, goes up to 65% in these categories. Many postage meter vendors are starting to provide online postage as a complement to their mailing systems in order to get these types of rates. How online postage works, it's the most common remote mailing solution. It's a subscription model. You can print from any computer with an internet connection. Most people are going to print when they're printing postage, they can either print directly onto the envelope, and you could print the postage, the destination address, and your return address, or you could just print postage or just the destination, so you have flexibility. Most people don't know how to feed an envelope into their printer, especially in an office environment where that device is shared, and they're going to use pre-printed postage sheets that you order from your mailing vendor, and those have a serial number on the sheet. And basically you enter that serial number into your sheet, and if you print 10 stamps, the first 10, the next time you use this sheet, would be grayed out. This is the most common. And then some people will have a vendor-provided label printer, much less common because it doesn't make the system flexible. It only works from that computer connected to this device. If you want to ship a shipping label, basically you can either use regular paper and print directly onto, then tape it onto the envelope or use a label, or you can use Avery type labels that you order from your office supply store. So the next iteration is cloud-based enterprise options. And so it's the same thing as online postage, but you can control multiple locations through one enterprise dashboard. And this offers simplicity onboarding new users. You can onboard them from a central place. You can report on what all locations and user activity is doing from a central dashboard. You can manage your billing and subscriptions, supplies and postage. You can control user access. This includes removing users who are no longer active. Some systems will have single sign-on access. So if you have more than 10 locations using online postage, we recommend this type of platform just due to its ease and simplicity. And you can actually control your users. The next iteration is multi-carrier enterprise mail and shipping. So it's similar to enterprise online postage, but it's more focused on shipping. So there's more robust rate shopping between the carriers and service levels. Examples, what if you wanted to put in a rule that says only certain director level people have the ability to ship 8:30 a.m. delivery because it costs an extra $25 per package? Or intercompany shipments have to default to 2-day. Like, you can control those things from these types of platforms. You can control your user management much better. You have better reporting options. It has an easier single sign-on capabilities, and some systems provide the ability to print postage stamp sheets on the same platform as you do shipping. Multi-carrier capabilities provide leverage with carrier negotiations. We'll talk more about that. But these systems that have the ability to print postage stamps, you can use these systems, and this is the significance of these systems. You can have one license of this from this enterprise multi-carrier mail and shipping platform that can provide postage stamp and shipping accessibility across the entire organization. So instead of spending $20 a month for an online postage license or $50 a month for a meter, you can have one license that works for every location across a company, no matter whether they're working from home or whether they're working in an office that maybe didn't have mailing equipment and couldn't justify it in the past. And this has made these platforms significantly more affordable and, in fact, less expensive than typically the postage meters and online subscriptions that are being replaced inside a company, but provide a lot more capabilities, which we'll talk about. So this is a weird concept, but I just want you to think about it. In many organizations, it's easier for someone to send a $15 overnight, like a FedEx or a UPS, than it is for them to print a 53-cent letter. And so you're probably asking yourself, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, we have a mailroom, we just dump it over there and they take care of it for us. And you're right, in a corporate office where there's a lot of mail volume, they have a mailroom. Maybe that's not the case. But that's not what the typical organizational employee is. The typical employee is not sitting in a corporate headquarters. They're in a field office, or they're working out of their house, and maybe they don't have any technology. So when you use UPS or FedEx, people who use UPS are going to use either Campus Ship or UPS.com. If they use FedEx as their corporate shipper provider, they're going to use FedEx.com. And everybody accesses it in the same way. Everybody logs into that website or using that tool, and then they process their shipments, and then at the end of the month, the corporate, or depending on if it's weekly or monthly billed, the corporate gets a bill that's broken down by location and charge center, and everybody does it the same way across an organization, no matter where they're working. Now, if you compare that to the post office, what type of equipment do I have? Like, a large corporate office might have a postage meters. Other company locations, some of them have postage meters, but people have been returning them left and right because they don't have the volume to justify spending $50 a month for that equipment. And so a lot of people have returned it. So they have no postage equipment in the office versus going to the post office and buying stamps. And if you're a remote worker working out of your house, you certainly have no postage equipment in that location, and you may have no way to print a postage stamp. So you go to the post office if you want to do postage, and then you put it on a credit card, a corporate credit card, or you fill out an expense report to get reimbursed, and you wait in line at the post office to deal with it, and you buy stamps that typically aren't even going to be the right denomination if it's heavier weights. So they don't have even a process to do it. So they say, forget it, I'm going to send it FedEx. And I'm going to send it for $15 because the FedEx system drives me to overnight shipments, which we'll explain. And that's a terrible model. Like, for a company to make it easier to send a $15 item than a 53-cent letter. And the other piece is we have complete visibility with FedEx and UPS. We have limited to fragmented view at all to any of the mail spends. With funding with FedEx and UPS, I get a bill for what I use and I pay for that bill. With the post office, you have to pre-fund a meter or a PC postage license, and then chargeback is fragmented at best with the Postal Service. So the future state that we're proposing that I think is the future of mail and parcel is to have uniform web platforms that can do UPS, FedEx, and the postal system all in one platform. And everyone across an organization does it the exact same way. And everyone has the ability to manage it and produce a postage stamp just as easily as they can do a $15 overnight. And to provide people options to make better decisions at the point of mailing. And that's what's not in place today, and that's the future of mail, which is the technology we're going to talk about. Multi-carrier enterprise mail and shipping systems. These are unbelievable in the capabilities these types of systems have. Employee level access across the entire organization. Multi-carrier rate shopping. You can compare rates between UPS, FedEx, Postal Service from the same platform. They have single sign-on so you can control your users. If an employee is not there any longer, you can give them the boot automatically versus worrying they still have the rights to ship. They have USPS capabilities. They can do commercial rates for the Postal Service, which is the 16+% discounts we talked about. They can do certified with electronic return receipt, and they can do stamp printing at every location. No matter where someone is, you can give them a website that they can print whatever stamps they need. And it's just can make this so simple and easy. People say, yes, but there's a charge for that system. I use a free carrier provided system from UPS or from FedEx. The majority of companies ship everything UPS and FedEx. They basically have a semi-monopoly on the shipping industry. Everyone uses one of those two carriers as their predominance. So people think these systems are free, and that's why they've used them for years. But there are costs associated with using those systems that I want to point out because people don't realize it. So one is if you're using that system only compares rates within that carrier. So if you have a UPS system, it's just UPS. If you have a multi-carrier system, you can compare the rates for UPS, FedEx, DHL, Post Office, LTL, couriers, all on the same platform. We find that generates on average 4 to 12% savings by rate shopping between carriers or even between the specific carrier, which we'll go into details in a sec. You can compare air rates to ground on the same screens. Well, that doesn't seem like a big issue, but ground service is guaranteed next day delivery in zones 2, which is up to about 200 miles away from your destination. Many people are shipping those things overnight air because they don't know any better. On the free systems, it doesn't show ground rates in the same place as it shows the air rate. So if you put in the package dimensions, it's going to default you to all the air options. If you want to see what the ground option is, you have to go to a different place in the system so it doesn't show you those rates side by side, and that's on purpose. These systems, the free systems, are designed to make it easier for you to ship on UPS or FedEx's network. They're not designed to save you money and optimize the way in which you're shipping. So the multi-carrier systems will show you that ground comparison. If the ground is going to get there at the same day, it'll show you those comparisons. The free systems don't have residential deliveries automatically flagged. Some of the multi-carrier systems will have databases of every residential delivery point in the country. So oftentimes people are working at their homes to a corporate name. So in our case, Postal Advocate, at a specific address. We all work remote. If someone's sending something to us and they don't manually click the residential flag, that the client's going to get billed $5 after the fact for the residential charge. The reason that's significant is when someone's making a decision about how to ship that item on a free system, they may not be adding the extra $5 to the cost to make their best decision. In a multi-carrier environment, that $5 is added and they say, well, you know what, the post office might be a much better bet. Or maybe I can move that ground, or do I have to get that there? You want to be looking at the full cost to ship the item. Ability to process priority mail and first-class parcel on the same systems. First-class parcel rates are trackable items with tracking numbers on 4x6 shipping labels to get rated by the ounce, and the rates start at about $3. UPS and FedEx start at the pound rate, so you can't do anything less than a pound with UPS and FedEx, where it can be by the ounce. through the Postal Service. It's a great option to be able to have. You can print postage stamps. Does every item have to go overnight? Does if people had access to be able to just print a 53-cent stamp, would they make better decisions? Certified mail opportunities on the same system as postal, so they can make some things that maybe are going UPS or FedEx overnight. Maybe a certified mail would be less expensive and provide the tracking capabilities they need and the proof of signature. And then single sign-on capabilities. Free carrier systems don't have single sign-on, but the multi-carrier systems can be configured that way. But the most important thing that free carrier systems happen is, what's happening at a lot of our clients is UPS and FedEx are going to our clients today, and you may be hearing the same thing in your own organizations. And at contract negotiation points, they're saying, we are at full capacity. You've been getting a great discount of 70, 80%, and we're basically going to put it to you, and you're going to get a 20% rate increase. And what choices do you have in this space in order to be able to leverage that? Use a free carrier provided tool that there's no way in a short time frame you could switch to another carrier if FedEx came with a better rate from what UPS offered. When you're on multi-carrier systems, you can, at a day's notice, you could change from UPS to FedEx or FedEx to UPS, and that provides leverage in contract negotiations. Expedited document and parcel shipping strategies. So historically, the industry is based on two core strategies. I'm going to use contract negotiators, or I'm going to negotiate my contract to the best of my ability. I'm a really strong negotiator on my own, and I'm going to negotiate for the best rates. And then I'm going to use some sort of freight audit service to audit my shipments for late shipments or items not being billed at the proper rates. And that's been the majority of savings opportunities that people have put forth in the shipping industry. So we think continue these things, absolutely. But as you're going to have less leverage in these contract negotiations in the future, and that many people have waived their right to late services as part of their contract negotiations, you need to provide the tools for your users to make the best decisions at the point of shipment, because as the best way to be able to reduce costs. Because other than that, your contract negotiations may not be as successful in the future, but you need to provide the tools for your users to make those best decisions. And then additional saving strategies exist when you find those specifics, and we'll show you some examples of some, is to identify what the key issues are, create a change management plan, educate your users on best practices, and continue to monitor and measure so you can drive those changes. It's change management behavior, which is what is the best way to save money. And the importance is, outside of shipping rooms, most of your packages are sent by desktop users with no shipping expertise. They're not professional shippers, and they don't typically have the technology, education, and support and reinforcement to know what they're doing. And to make this point hit home, think about there's two types of shippers. There's a professional shipper that works in a warehouse environment or in some sort of corporate mailroom. They're trained around shipping processes. It's a core part of their job. They have systems and tools to optimize. There's traffic management review around what they're doing. They primarily ship ground for everything that they do because they're shipping a product, or they're shipping product typically. And there's continual education and improvement on them. But now think about everybody else in an organization. They're casual users. There's no formal training for most companies. It's only done when needed. They typically use free carrier tools or air bills. There's little oversight, and they primarily ship overnight services, and it's mostly for documents, and there's no formal education or best practice. This group can make up the largest segment of a company's shipping spends, and frankly, is a liability from a shipping process. The only way to control this group of users is to provide tools and support that can help them make better decisions at the point of shipment. Let's talk about rate shopping. So rate shopping, people think, oh, I'm going to compare rates between UPS and FedEx. That's not really the way it works for most organizations. Most organizations have a prime carrier that they use all the time. I use FedEx, I use UPS, and everything's going to flow amongst those carriers. So the number one way to save money inside the carriers is to rate shop between service levels. And let me explain those things. Ground. If I'm sending something ground, this is a specific client example. If they're going to send something overnight and it's going in zones 2, it's $9 to $10 to ship that. Priority, $9 to ship it next day air standard. And if they want to ship it ground, it's guaranteed the same delivery time for $8. Okay, so the key thing is this $7.96 and this $9 are guaranteed to get there at the same time, but yet everyone is sending them next day air standard. And a lot of people just default to next day or priority because they don't know any better. They don't need it there per se at 10:30. That's the way they ship. So one is compare ground. If you're sending something 2-day, 3-day, consider could those go at ground at faster delivery rates? In zones 3 and 4, if you're sending things 3-day, ground gets there at the same time, but the systems that they're using don't show them this as an option. Consider USPS for lightweight residential items going to rural zip codes. So think about, even if you're sending it ground and it's $8, and you look at priority mail and it's $7.40. Well, first class parcel might be $3.46, so that could be an option. But if it's going to a residence, on top of that $7.96, it's $5. So now we're at $13. If it's going to a rural zip code, 61% of zip codes in the US are considered rural. UPS and FedEx charge delivery area surcharges that are $3.25 to $5.90. So now the piece goes from $13 to $17. And then right now, fuel's at 16%. And so that could make it $19 versus the post office, which is $3.46 to $7.40 because they don't charge those things. So in a business-to-business lightweight scenario, maybe it makes sense to ship UPS or FedEx. Lightweight items going to residences, the post office in many cases is going to be a far better bet from a cost perspective. If you're going to send things UPS or FedEx, make sure things are properly coded. Look at the difference in this client's rates for next day, for the letter versus the 1 pound rate. 12, if it's going in zone 5, $12.90 versus $21.56. A lot of those less than 1 pound items are still documents that people are sending, and they're just not clicking on the right packaging. That's an educational piece that needs to be reinforced. If it's a parcel, make sure the dimensions are entered up front. There's different dimensional rates that are in place for UPS and FedEx than there are through the Postal Service that makes the Postal Service a better value. But the point to show you is this is an example of a client we did a rate shop analysis from. Of the 13,000 transactions that could have had savings, there was $273,000 just converting their air shipments to ground that would have the same next day delivery. And when we looked at their 2-day, 3-day, and ground shipments that were sent through UPS and FedEx, there was an additional $230,000 of savings moving it to the Postal Service that would have had the same or faster delivery. So you can see by having these rate shopping, you can control your usage and make sure people are making the right decisions. If you can put these types of calendar views in front of people's faces where they can make the decision to say, okay, when is something going to get there? What are my best options? And it shows the ground and the postal options in the same place, people can make informed decisions. The campus ship systems and the FedExes.coms don't give you that option. The residential delivery area surcharges, fee visibility. So you want to make sure that extra $5 is being compared in the rate shop equation. And then does everything have to be a trackable item? Could we just generate a 53-cent letter for these items and on the same platform have the ability to print out a postage stamp? And that's the importance of driving these savings. So outside of these savings, could the mail be slowed if it was better rates? And does everything have to have that sort of prioritization? Address validation. Many companies are paying $18 for FedEx and UPS for every address correction because there's no process to manage it. And oftentimes the same address is being shipped multiple times. This client had one address that was shipped 14 times to the wrong address at a $252 charge. And this is in a short window of a time frame. You can use automated systems that force address corrections or that have databases of every address inside the system. So some of these multi-carrier systems can be much more effective on doing this type of address cleansing. And then set up a process to communicate the address changes with the people who got the address cleanse. So if someone got charged $18 from an address cleanse, our model with our clients is that we send communications out to them to the end user that says, you got an $18 address correction for this address. You may want to clean it up in your database before you send to that address in the future. And then work towards having centralized databases of addresses that could be cleansed to make sure that you aren't getting these types of fees ongoing. Certified mail with electronic return receipt. If you can have these in the same platforms, there's a lot of value to it for the reason that most people are sending these, green card return receipts. If you can move from green card to an electronic return receipt, which is much easier to fill out, basically you would either have a cover sheet that goes into a large window envelope or you use pre-printed barcode labels. And then when you want to track the return receipt, instead of getting the green card back in the mail and having to file it and wonder if it came back or not, you can electronically print out these printouts that have a copy of the signature. And this is held up in a court of law throughout the US. There's a $1.25 savings switching to the electronic version. That single database for all certified documents. So instead of having to manage like hundreds or thousands of these green cards coming back, you can have one database that shows what certified have come back over the dates, and you have access to the signatures in one place. Some systems have a firm mail book, which is a manifest that can be printed and given to the postal clerk to get rubber stamped. This is the ultimate, like if you're in a court of law, it's the #1 thing people ask for is, I want to see a copy of the firm mail book, and that was rubber stamped by the postal provider. There are systems that can provide those. And some systems can automatically retrieve all the return receipt files as a batch and make them resident in your system so you don't have to go one by one to track all these return receipts. And then some systems can provide separate PDFs of each signature as a unique file, so you could attach it to an index, to a record system, and make sure that you can store it in your own databases. So there's a lot that can be done with certified. If you do a lot of certified mail, you should look at these types of solutions to see what's going to automate your process. User access and single sign-on. So the free carrier-provided systems do not provide single sign-on. We've heard people discussing with FedEx about setting it up. We haven't heard of anyone specifically setting it up. I'm sure there are people out there who have like done workarounds for this, but the multi-carrier systems have the ability to have single sign-on set up, which is a very important. When users leave, they're typically not removed from a free campus ship system. They sit in there, and that's a liability because that user who's no longer employed by you could go online and they could ship product under your shipping numbers. Most companies want a process to make sure that that user is booted out of the system and can no longer ship the moment that they're no longer employed from you. And single sign-on can help set that up. So as people think that these systems are easy, single sign-on still requires user administration to make it work, but it's the driving force that we're hearing from larger clients that everybody wants single sign-on set up because they want simple ways to control their users. And it's also much easier because the user likes the experience because they don't have to remember their passwords. There's no username and password because they're automatically logged into whatever platform because they're using single sign-on. Central administration. For these multi-carrier systems to work, it requires central administration. Whether we're doing this for clients, you could do it for your own self or have your own people doing it, but it's a requirement that you need to have someone managing these systems or they won't work, they'll flop. And you need someone to do the following. You need someone to define the requirements of the system, to help implement the system, to provide training plans and train the users, to onboard the users, to manage user access. Even with single sign-on, there's still items that have to be done to manage the users in the system. Case and issue management. How is that user supported when they have problems? What use, you have to monitor usage and manage chargeback. You have to report on key metrics that are important to you. Quantify what savings these systems generate and expand and promote use. Most of the time people don't launch these systems across an entire organization in one day. It's usually group by group, division by division, region by region. So these are the things that we find important and that we're managing for clients, not just for multi-carrier systems, but also for the carrier-provided ones. And so we have expertise in what the carrier-provided systems are doing because we're managing it for clients. But still, for any of these systems, there needs to be an onboarding plan with rollouts, IT issues, adding users, cost centers, educational webinars, validating first-time use, assisting with equipment returns. Anytime these types of platforms are put in, we're going to have mailing equipment that has to be returned and the postage has to be managed to make sure everybody got their equipment back and then the postage got refunded. Do you have internal resources to manage this? And then things need to be managed inside these systems around billing, reporting, visibility to the use and spend, and then the postage management aspects. And then managing day-to-day requests. And this is the biggest area. When you have a company that has multiple locations and there could be hundreds or in some cases thousands of users across your organization that need access to these platforms, who are those users going to for help? Usually they send it to someone in a corporate mailroom or someone who it's a part-time responsibility for them to be able to manage it, and they do it in their free time and their emails back and forth, and there's no oversight and case management to it. And so, but without that, you can't have a way to improve on the process and to make sure that these issues don't continue. So what we've done is we've developed a process for this. And even if you don't think about using us, we'd recommend having some sort of process that does this, where our clients land in a case portal. The case portal has a list of frequent items that come up for that user. And then they enter who they are and they submit a ticket through this platform. And when they submit the ticket, they get a case number and the details of the ticket. Our dedicated agents will get those as well. We'll respond directly to their use, and then we'll document the notes and have a closed case when we know the issue is resolved. And then they'll have an email of that closed case in case they need to pop something up in the future. And then we'll record the notes and activities of that. But most important, all cases are documented in reports and logs that are reported on, because if we're seeing the same type of case over and over again, then we may want to produce some educational requirements, or we might want to look at enhancing a process to make it so there'll be fewer cases in the future. And if you don't have sort of these metrics and reporting around these cases, you can't make the process better for your end users in the future. The only way to figure out, and we started from the beginning to see if these types of systems and platforms and savings are available to you, is to get the visibility to what is happening today in your organization. So we will do this analysis for clients at no charge to show them what savings are available in their processes. And in order to do that, we figured out a way to make this analysis simple. And we do this at no charge and no obligation to the clients for any future services. But we can at least make it easy for you to have visibility to what are the opportunities inside your organization. And to do that, we've created a very simple process. One, we need a letter of authority that we've had approved from the vendors that allows us access to your data. And it just allows us the ability to be able to review your mailing spends. And then we'll say, do you have any reports to any of your mailing equipment spends? Have you ever got, or from your shipping vendors or from your outsourced vendors, have you gotten any reports from them? In many cases, people don't have any. So what then we ask for is, can you give us an accounts payable export? So from your payable system, here's a list of vendor names that we'd say, can you provide us reports on what you've done with those vendors over the last 12 months? And then we'll go through that list of transactions and we'll ask for specific transactions where we see unique vendor AP list, because the AP file typically won't have all the details needed. We'll go to the vendor's websites, we'll log in the details of those transactions, and then we'll be able to get all the spend information that we need to find out what's happening across that area. With shipping spends, we ask for a month's worth of UPS or FedEx detail in an electronic format, usually hopefully Excel, that lists out all the transactions that have happened, and then just meet with us to review the results. And we'll basically be able to show you what's the opportunity inside your organization. But in summary, gain visibility to your mail spends. It's the most important way to reduce costs. Even if you don't even want to consider us, have some process to gain the visibility to your spends, because it is the only way to know or benchmark what you're doing and what opportunities are there. Mail equipment and postage spends can be optimized with the proper oversight. More and more people are going to be working from home or in offices without mailing solutions, and they're going to continue to make these overnight decisions where they're going to be sending things overnight versus sending it through the postal system. And we know that the mailing vendors and the shipping vendors are going to be increasing costs at continually the highest levels that we've seen in history. Cloud-based tools are needed to support your users' mail and shipping needs. Having these enterprise-wide cloud-based offerings that can do multiple carriers and rate shop for the lowest costs is the only way people are going to have to drive costs in the future. These enterprise versions allow you to manage users in single sign-on, and all of these solutions create efficiencies and savings and allow you to just basically have better controls. But for these systems to be successful, they need central administration and oversight, or else there's no way you're going to be able to continually drive user behavior. So we run these types of educational webinars all the time because we find it's the best way to educate people of what are the potentials in the marketplace. A little bit about us. We manage mail spends for the largest companies in America. It's what we do. We've driven $73 million of savings for our clients. We manage the largest portfolio in the world of spend. On the equipment side, we average 56% savings. Our average client has saved almost $2 million. And the majority of our staff has worked in the mailing industry, and we have over 200 years of experience in the mail industry. And we provide the only web-based tools that we've seen in the industry that allow you to see your mailing spends across multiple vendors and spend categories. Our clients are some of the largest in the country. Doesn't make any difference, what industry people are in. It just matters that people have disparate mailing spends. And some of our clients are smaller organizations that might have, a handful of locations, but have big spends in certain areas. And then other accounts could have thousands of locations. We have 2 accounts in the Fortune 10 as an example. But it just matters that people have disparate mail and shipping spends that could use to be optimized. So thank you for coming to the seminar. We're going to open it up to any questions, and hopefully you got some ideas from this about ways to potentially reduce costs.
Thanks, Adam. Hello, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And I want to remind you that there's 2 different ways you can ask questions. You can either type your question in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you to ask a question. So let's get to our first question. The first question is, how much work is involved on my side to get the mailing analysis done?
We try to take all the work out. We literally need 1 letter of authority, an accounts payable export that will give you the requirements to ask someone to pull that report, and then we'll come back with some specific copies of invoices that we would like copies of. And then if someone can generate a month of shipping history, and if they don't have the ability to generate that from UPS or FedEx, we usually format the email that you could forward to your vendor for them to generate the file for you. So our objective is for the client to do very little work on this, and then we're going to produce the stuff in the back end using the vendor's web portals and questions we're going to ask the vendors directly to get to the needed information to provide the visibility that we think people need.
All right, we have another question. What are the biggest obstacles in getting people to switch to online postage from postage meters?
So if we've done it in 2 different ways, one successful, one's unsuccessful. So if we go to a client that has, let's just say 100 locations with mailing equipment, and we try to convert those meters, and online postage is one of the options that they have, and they can pick between having a postage meter at $50 or they can have online postage at $20 for like a single license system, then people are going to say they're not going to want to deal with the change management. They're going to say, we'll just keep with what we have because it's too small a decision for them. And that doesn't work very well. We'll get some people to convert, but we won't get the majority. What works best is, 1, to have an enterprise program versus having single location like online postage subscriptions. But mostly it's to have corporate have either a mandate or a recommendation. So it says, we're converting all of our locations to this, and this is the enterprise protocol, or to say, this is our recommended process for postage disbursement for locations doing less than $300 a month in postage. And with that, we find everybody goes along and everybody does it the same way. And the analogy I would use is with UPS and FedEx, everybody processes UPS and FedEx across an organization in basically the same way. And people don't have a lot of choices. Mail, we view as sort of the same thing.
All right, well, if there are no further questions, I would like to thank everybody for joining us today. Please fill out the survey that will appear at the conclusion of the webinar, and be sure to check out our social media pages to find helpful information from us on a more frequent basis. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you coming.